Coming up, we can't not talk about it. The coronavirus in aviation. We have the latest info you need to know.
And a few things to take your mind off the crisis, including perhaps the most expensive Cessna 310 ever. AOPA Live this week begins in just a moment.
I believe that trust is something that you earn over time. It's not something that you have right away. We've been repairing headsets for years now, and I personally have been repairing headsets for 11 years. When a customer sends in their headset, they trust that it will be repaired and it will be perfect.
This is AOPA Live This Week with Tom Haynes and Alyssa Cobb.
Well, from our homes to yours, the coronavirus crisis continues. And like so many of you, we're staying home and keeping our social distance.
We sure are, and good to see you, Alyssa. This is our second week working remotely for most AOPA employees, and it's getting a little bit tedious, I got to tell you, and it's affecting all of us. Even our boss, Mark Baker, he's hanging out at home, but he's making sure that AOPA continues to work for you.
Well, we're doing the sensible and responsible thing as an employer first, making sure people are working from home, frankly, everywhere. But we are working and trying to do things to protect the general aviation access and the economics around general aviation, and working with the regulators, FAA, and working with the House on some type of relief bills as well, as it relates to airport improvements down the road. But we've got a lot going on, and you'll still be getting your magazine in your mailbox. And hopefully people are going on to AOPA Live and our website and getting updates, everything GA that AOPA can bring forth.
As Mark mentioned, AOPA and 6 other aviation groups reached out to Congress for support of general aviation airports. And in fact, the Senate version of the $2 trillion stimulus package includes some $100 million for general aviation airports, plus some money for the airlines, for aviation workers, and other aviation programs. The House is expected to have passed it by the time you see this and sent it on to the president. Meanwhile, over at the FAA, AOPA and other organizations have asked the agency for relief from some calendar items that are affecting all of us. Medical expiration dates, time limits on knowledge tests, and CFI renewals, deadlines we can't meet while we're hunkered down at home.
So from a regulatory perspective, we've had great support from the FAA, and they're working. We should have released later today, tomorrow, the next day, the extensions by category, whether they be ADs, as you saw, was pushed out from the Cessna 210 AD timeline, as well as medical and all the other things that are on our list of things that have calendaring. And the FAA has been remarkably supportive about making sure we can get that done and get it communicated correctly here in the next couple of days.
And if you weren't in our building, you'd think everything was perfectly normal at AOPA. That's because we're doing everything we've always done, from advocacy to answering your questions. Our great IT department had everything together so that all of us could work from home.
We're all working remotely now. We got about 35 people that are working remotely. Our Pilot Information Center has, the Pilot Information Center includes all of our aviation technical services, our med certification specialists, and our digital product specialists.
Our member services representatives are awesome, and they're also answering phones from home. So call, email, online chat. If you need to talk to us, we're still here for you.
We also have a new online PIC product. Go right on our website, click on the tab that's at the top of the screen, and you'll see that it comes up much like a Quora type knowledge base, where you can either look at it by category or just browse. Or you can ask it a question. You can type in certain search terms and come up with anything you want. Yeah, we've had a lot of calls, and we've been very busy lately.
And one of the questions they get is, are our airports open? The short answer, yes. So here's the deal. A local or state order to stay at home or closing businesses cannot close an airport that gets federal funds. And that's most public airports. That's federal law. And there's good reason for an airport to remain open during times like these. They are the critical links to our communities. General aviation airplanes are flying needed medical supplies to community hospitals, and they're also moving much needed parts for ventilators.
But then there's the long answer to whether an airport is open or not. The airport itself can only be closed by NOTAM, of course, And you would know that if you check NOTAMs before you go. And we know that you do that. But airport services might, in fact, be closed. In order to close all but essential services, for example, could shut down an FBO or maybe the rental counter, and Uber and Lyft. They may not be available when you get there. And there have already been cases where air traffic control towers, for example, have been shut down for a time due to infection of the coronavirus. And this has effectively closed down the airport, or at least significantly delayed arrivals and departures. So if you really need to fly, best to call ahead and make sure that the services you need will be available when you get there. But hey, that brings us to the even larger question, Alyssa. You can fly maybe, but is it really a good idea?
That's right, Tom. Now, AOPA's top-level guidance is that we all need to comply with the CDC guidelines and any local or state orders. Now, so far, there have been no nationwide orders affecting flying from the federal government. But there are times when, even though you can fly, you shouldn't. So consider Tangier Island. Now, it's an isolated community in the Chesapeake Bay. Even though they have a nice runway and they're a popular tourist stop, I know it's one of my favorites, they're asking us to stay away. The little fishing village has hardly changed in the last 100 years or so. They'd like to keep it that way as far as the coronavirus is concerned. The island has had no known exposure to the virus, and they hope that by asking pilots to avoid the island, they can avoid infection. Mark Flynn with the Virginia Department of Aviation says right now it's just a request, but they are working to formalize the closure.
Tangier Island is so isolated, they generally are not having to deal with the coronavirus issue. So having sport pilots coming in and wandering over to have lunch, which we all love to do, great place to go. Right now, they think it's in their interest to not have that happening. So the department is trying to work with them and work with the FAA to help that move forward.
FAA regulations put a hurdle to just NOTAMing the runway closed, right? It's a public use airport that's received federal funds, so it's open. But the Islanders really hope you'll consider it closed.
So yeah, Alyssa, that is a great spot. And there are other smaller communities around the nation not happy about folks flying or driving in, for that matter. Nantucket, the Hamptons, a lot of places where folks may have a second home and they want to escape out there from the big cities and landing at those local airports. And I guess the locals aren't very happy to see them because of fears of contamination. And I guess that's understandable because we already know that the big major hospitals in the major cities right now are having issues dealing with all of the volume of patients that they have as a result of this. Small hospitals in these smaller communities are even less prepared to handle a COVID-19 outbreak.
That's right, Tom. And now Florida says anybody coming from New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut has to self-quarantine for 14 days. You know, travel is really complicating this, no matter the mode of transportation, and it's really making the virus spread.
Yeah, it really has, and it makes it difficult for pilots to know whether it's safe to travel or not, and how risky really is it. So with all those concerns, we wondered if a healthy pilot flying to another airport could somehow spread the virus. So we asked Dr. Dan Macy's, who was a National Institutes of Health researcher and served in the U.S. Public Health Service. He said that you could be infected and spreading the virus and never have symptoms.
And so that idea that you could actually be endangering others and not even know it really makes this virus a particularly bad actor.
Dr. Macy's prepared a study for the California Disaster Airlift Response Team. You may know that as DART better, in which he concluded that at this time it isn't healthy for two or more people to fly in a small general aviation cockpit.
The first is just the physical limitation of aircraft that have 6 seats or less. There's what might be thought of as a shared respiratory space where just in the normal acts of speaking, an occasional sneeze, just even breathing, we're actually sharing not only the air in the cabin, but we're sharing small droplets that we exhale as part of normal speech. The second is the persistence of the virus.
The virus can live on a hard surface for up to 72 hours. And Dr. Macy says that the N95 mask that we've all heard so much about and which you probably can't find anyhow, well, that's not enough to protect you from the virus in a small cockpit. His recommendations are directed specifically to the volunteer pilot organizations like Angel Flight, but it should be something that we could all think about. So, Alyssa, it's complicated out there, not easy to go out there. And I suppose if you wanted to go fly by yourself, that would be one thing. But taking anybody with you certainly brings some risk.
Right. Now, my husband and I did go flying Sunday together. I needed to get a flight review in,
Right.
but we figure, we live in the same condo, so we were probably okay being in the cockpit together. But for the few people, husband and wife pilots out there, for everybody else, yeah, it's probably best to not fly together for a while.
Yeah, that's good point, unfortunately.
Okay, now for something different. And we know you'd rather be flying, but if you can't fly, you can at least dream about it. So we've put together some YouTube playlists of videos to keep your head in aviation while we wait out this pandemic. There's both new and slightly used videos there. Plus, we've started a new series called Pilot's Lounge for a little bit of hangar flying, including some tales by some pilots you will recognize. We'll be adding numerous videos to the playlist each week, so binge away.
And we know that some of you are still flying, and we hope so safely. So we're asking you to help out the rest of us with a bit of an aviation fix. Send us a video of your flight if you can share it with us, and that'll help those of us who are trapped inside. Ken Varay did.
Having access to general aviation is a great way to get out while still being socially distant. Filled the Bonanza up with 114 gallons of gas in Alpine. Departed there, did a short hop down to Big Bend. Found some trails, some nice hills, climbed up on them, and just enjoyed the day. Packed a picnic, and so when we got done hiking for a couple hours, made it back to the plane and kind of sat out in our camping chairs, Oshkosh style.
You can share your experiences by sending your notes and video to the URL there on your screen. I don't know about you, Alyssa, but that looks like some fun. I'm kind of missing the chance to go out and hang out with the airplane a bit.
Yeah, it really is a boost just to go out and be around the airplane. And then for folks who can get up in the air, my goodness, it just makes your mood soar.
Right, it sure does. Well, hey, when we come back, sad news for those who love warbirds.
And if you loved Sky King, you're going to really love this 310.
Welcome back. A bit of good news for the airport world. John Tune Airport in Nashville, Tennessee is open again. As you'll recall, the airport suffered extensive tornado damage a few weeks ago. Local media reports that the tornado caused some $93 million of damage to the airport infrastructure and, get this, destroyed 90 airplanes. 90 airplanes, no more in the fleet. That is hard to watch, I got to tell you. And we're sorry to announce that we won't be flying into Casper, Wyoming this year. AOPA Fly into the Heart of Wyoming was originally scheduled for June 19 and 20, but the coronavirus pandemic has really made planning for events like that and scheduling public events just about impossible. Good news is that the good folks in Casper, Wyoming really want to see you, as do we. So the fly-in has been tentatively scheduled for the same weekend next year.
Now, the pandemic continues to shutter more aviation events and companies. Epic Aircraft, maker of the sleek single-engine turboprop, the E-1000 just delivered its first production airplane a couple weeks ago. But now, the Bend, Oregon company has laid off most of its 325 workers. Waco Aircraft has closed until mid-April to comply with the Michigan governor's order for workers to stay home. Embraer in Brazil has put all of its factory workers on paid leave. Bombardier in Canada has suspended business jet production, and the Farnborough Air Show in England has been canceled, not to mention the Great Alaska Airmen Gathering that's been postponed. We have all the latest on how the virus is affecting aviation, and we're constantly updating it on our website. Now, this is a major setback for the Collings Foundation. They preserve and fly historic aircraft, and under an FAA exemption, they had been offering living history flight experiences in some of their aircraft, including a B-24 Liberator and B-17 Flying Fortress. But as you'll remember, the B-17 crashed last October in Connecticut. The FAA re-examined the Foundation's petition to continue their exemption. The feds determined the Collings Foundation was not meeting the requirements of the exemption and denied an extension. And that means no more public rides in their aircraft. You know, Tom, I had the opportunity to fly with them in a B-24, and it was an experience I'll never forget. And I'm really sorry that others won't have that opportunity.
Yeah, that is a real shame. I too have flown in that B-24, although I didn't get to fly it like you did. But just an example of one of those incredible warbirds out there that now isn't going to be available. Hopefully, they can turn things around. There were some pretty damning information, though, in that FAA report, and so hopefully they can get their problems resolved and get back flying again sometime. Hey, changing gears now. Out of the blue of the western sky comes Sky King. If you were a kid in the 50s and you liked aviation, you probably fell in love with the twin-engine Cessna 310, and you're about to fall in love all over again. AOPA Live's Josh Cochran brings us the story of John Bowman and his beautiful Cessna 310.
Out of the clear blue of the western sky comes Sky King.
Starting in 1951, Western TV adventure series Sky King captured the imagination of youth across the country, just as fictitious Arizona rancher and pilot Sky King captured criminals with the help of Songbird, his trusty twin-engine Cessna.
He would go out and chase the bad guys with the 310, and I'm soaking this up as a 8, 9, 10, 12, 13-year-old. It was on for a few years. And when the time came, I thought, that's where I want to go.
The twin Cessna in the TV series left a lasting impression on John Bowman, starting a lifelong love for the Cessna 310.
It's visually, to me, and I know it's personal, a lot of it's personal, a very beautiful airplane. And so there was a little bit of a love affair to start with.
John realized his dream of owning a 310 when he and his wife bought this R model in the late 80s. They went on to fly it thousands of hours for business, and it served them well as a trusty traveling airplane. But when John retired, he wanted more for the airplane.
I wanted to do a total restoration of this airplane.
John went on to upgrade the engines to IO 550s, added new props, vortex generators, and of course, new paint and interior. The scheme design was especially important to him.
So when we did our paint scheme, we used lines and we used colors and graphics that would enhance the features on the airplane that we found visually appealing.
All that work adds up to a 310 that's better than new.
May or may not be the best 310 there. Of course, I think maybe it is, but for sure it's one of the most expensive.
So while this work and cost for an old twin, it goes back to John's love for the design and his desire to keep the airplane type alive.
Is I would like to see more people getting involved with 310s. I see so many of them without engines and weeds growing up around. I mean, we fly still quite a bit into smaller airports, and it's just kind of sad. And it's a great airplane. I know it's a great airplane. I just wish more people felt that way about it.
Josh Cochran, AOPA Live.
You can read more about the Cessna 310 in the April issue of AOPA Pilot magazine. I mean, that is a spectacular looking airplane, Alyssa. I've always thought those late model 310s with a pointy nose were among the prettiest airplanes out there. They really are sharp.
Yeah, that is one nice airplane. Like a sweepstakes project almost.
Yeah, that would definitely be a big project, twin engine like that.
For sure. Well, last week we showed you the C-130 that was disassembled here at our Frederick Municipal Airport, and it was towed across town in the middle of the night to Fort Detrick.
And this week we leave you with a little look at some time-lapse images we took of that airplane as it sat out there in the taxiway for some 6 months. as it was occupying that space that we all kind of missed, but we kind of liked having the airplane around there too. So take a look at the images. I think you'll enjoy it. Meanwhile, stay safe, stay home if possible, and we'll see y'all next week.